Wouldn't be very nice to hit somebody with one of these, would it? Or a whole bunch of people throwing these rocks at you. That'd be pretty unpleasant. In the gospel today, we're very familiar with. But I think the gospel today is about something that didn't happen, but should have happened. I remember many years ago I was dealing with a family whose parents died and there was an inheritance. And the 4 children wound up fighting over it. And you know how these things go. One of the sons wound up with most of the money after a long and nasty court battle, a lot of money spent, a lot of acrimony. And the other 3 lost. And they were very angry at the brother. And it seemed like they were very united against the brother, but they were just for a while they were fighting him. But I noticed over a few years, they all drifted apart too. And they were all divided amongst themselves. You see, sin and anger never bring us together. They only divide us. And it's only reconciliation and forgiveness that bring people back together. There's one little detail right at the beginning of the gospel that it's easy to overlook. It says Jesus went up to the Mount of Olives. And in the morning he came down and went to the temple area. For Jesus, the Mount of Olives was the place he would go to pray when he was in Jerusalem. The Mount of Olives is right across a little valley from the temple. Maybe a quarter, half a mile. Not very far. And we know the Mount of Olives is where Jesus went. That's where the Garden of Gethsemane was. And that's where he prayed the night before he died after the Last Supper. It was his preferred place of prayer. And the Gospel over and over again tells us how Jesus would go off to the mountain to pray. And he seems like he always did that before something big was going to happen. Before he called the apostles, before he would be arrested and put to death. And he does it again before this encounter in the temple. As if he knew that something momentous was going to happen the next day. That they would bring him this woman caught in adultery. And they were ready to stone her. So Jesus has been praying about this already. The trap they're about to set for him. I think most of the time we read this story, we read it on a different level. We read it on the level of, okay, the old Mosaic law called for women to be stoned if they committed adultery. It doesn't say what happened to the men, but they got off, I guess, you know. But the women would be stoned, the Old Testament Mosaic law. And we see, contrasting that, Jesus' mercy. Right? So that's one level, and I think that's a fair level to interpret the story. You can also look at it as kind of a contrast between the goodness of Jesus, the forgiveness of Jesus, and then the hardness of heart of the Pharisees. Right? That's the other drama that's going on here. And very often we talk about it in either one of those two frameworks. But I think the more important framework for us, and maybe more relevant to us, is what should have happened. You see, on one level, Jesus outfoxes the Pharisees, and they all go away, and they don't throw the rocks at the woman. So, mission accomplished. Right? That was good. But what didn't happen? I think Jesus probably left there a little disappointed. I think he left that encounter not feeling like I won, but that the victory was incomplete. As the Gospel says, they all went off. They left their stones. They all went off, each to his own home. They went in different directions. There was no more solidarity among them. They weren't united anymore. They were only united in their anger at her and their desire to punish her. But they were no longer united. Probably they were all united as they whipped up the fervor of the crowd to pick up their rocks. Let's go to the temple. We hear Jesus is there teaching. We'll trap him. And we can kill this woman too. But once Jesus says what he says, they're all dispersed. No more unity amongst them. And that's what sin does to us. It divides us not only between us and God, but also amongst ourselves. You know that old saying, there's no honor among thieves. And there's no unity and there's no charity in sin. I think we all have a touch of this. Where, okay, we get the message, and even the Pharisees got the message, that it's wrong to stone a person to death because of their sin. They drop the rocks. They go away. But we all struggle with the deeper issue that we always put people in a box based on their past. It's almost impossible for us to not look at a person and remember what they did. The guy who had the DUI 30 years ago. The woman who had the abortion. The other guy who got in trouble with the law and did some time. The other guy who couldn't hold a job. The lazy bum who only plays video games all day long. The spendthrift. We label people. We pigeonhole them. And we interpret everything in their lives through that mistake they made once upon a time. And we don't let go of it. And it's very hard for people to get out of that box. There's a reason people keep their skeletons in the closet. Because they're afraid for people to see those faults. And it breaks down the unity amongst us. I think what was supposed to happen, what Jesus wanted to happen, was not only that they drop the rocks, but that they embrace the woman as a sister. That they reconcile with her. And they say, we're the same as you. And we walk together in the mercy and the forgiveness of Jesus Christ. They couldn't do that. They couldn't let go of that. And so they're still trapped. Each one of those Pharisees is still trapped. They're the ones that are slaves. On the other hand, Jesus says to the woman, go. No one's condemned you. Go. Not go away, but go to that future that God has prepared for you. Because God doesn't see you in terms of sin. God sees you in terms of what He created you for. The beautiful plan that God had for your life. That's been slowed down because of this sin. But God sees you in light of all your potential. With the beautiful plan and the beautiful mission that God had for you. Go into that future. Go embrace that future. And what Jesus wanted was for all of them to climb out of that box and to embrace that future. Where the past is the past. God doesn't dwell on that. God dwells in that beautiful image that He created us all in, His own image. And the possibility of a future that's free. Free from any burden from our past. Think about the people in our lives that we've still got in a box because of mistakes they made. Can we let those go? Can we go to that person and reconcile? It's one thing not to throw the stone at them. It's another thing to embrace them as a brother or a sister. Can we do that this Lent? then I think Jesus will walk away from that encounter truly rejoicing that we've made our peace with each and every one.